Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lora Rolling and this is part 4 of the Gingerbread Man ornament tutorial. This is the Gingerbread Man ornament that we are making. It is so cute with all the little gingerbread men and the candy surrounding him. And today we're going to be making the unit called Mr. G's Eyes. If you haven't seen parts 1 through 3 yet, that's okay. You can do these out of order. I'll have those videos listed down below in the description. That way when you finish this one, you can go back and watch those. We just have a few materials to get ready, so let's get them listed and then we can get started. Let's go. So the beads that we're going to be using in today's video are all Miyuki Delicas. I have chalk white, opaque chartreuse, matte metallic bronze gold iris, dyed silver lined bright fuchsia, opaque dark cranberry, and opaque black. Just to keep it simple, I'm going to call this white, light green, brown, pink, red, and black. We'll also need some beading thread and a beading needle. I like to use the Eslon Fire thread in the color Crystal, and this is a 4-pound thread. And then I like to use a size 10 beading needle. For implements, I like to use my long nose pliers to hold on to my thread at the end. And then I cut my thread with scissors. And then in the beginning of the video, I'm going to be using the fire method to end the tail, and I'm going to show you how I do that. So let's thread our needle with 3 feet of thread, and then we can get started. So I've threaded my needle with 3 feet of thread, and now I'm ready to pick up my first 3 beads. Let's pick up 3 brown beads. And then we'll take these 3 beads and we will pull them down to the end of our thread, leaving about a 6-inch tail. Now let's tie a square knot. So we will cross over on top and then pull the tail through. And then cross over on top again and pull the tail through. So now we have 2 loops. Let's put our fingers in the bottom loop, the one that has the beads in it, and then we will tug on the tail thread and the long thread until that top loop turns into a knot. Now, I'm not going to touch the flame to the thread, but I'm just going to get it super close to the tip so it melts it. And it turns the tip into this teensy little knot or bead. Now, keeping our fingers in the loop, we're going to be tugging on the long thread while we're twisting the loop until that little knot at the end of the tail meets the long thread. Now let's take our thumbnail and pull that knot all the way down to the beads. And now it looks like we have a teensy little triangle, and that completes row number 1. So you'll notice that the knot is kind of in the center of the 2 beads. Let's tug it to one side so it just looks like it's coming out of one of those beads. And it looks like the thread's coming out of that bead also. So now we're ready to pick up our next 2 beads. Let's pick up 2 brown beads. And it looks like we're coming out of this bead. So let's sew through the bead that it doesn't look like our thread is coming out of. Then we're going to try to get those 2 new beads to sit right on top of their buddies. And Now we can pick up one white bead and one brown bead. Now we're coming out of this bead, so let's sew through the next bead. Now let's pick up 2 brown beads and we're coming out of this bead, so let's sew through the next, and we'll also sew through its buddy, the one that's right below it. When we sew through 2 beads, that means that we are stepping up and putting our thread in position to start the next row. So that completes row number 2, and now we get to start row number 3. Let's start by picking up 2 brown beads, and we'll sew through the next. Always making sure that the new beads that we've added are sitting right on top of their buddies. Now let's pick up 1 brown bead. And we're coming out of this bead right here. Let's skip the one that's set downward a little bit, and we'll sew through the white bead. That's the one that's poking up. We're going to call the one that's set down our down bead, and the one that's poking up our up bead. Now let's pick up 2 brown beads, and we're coming out of this bead. Let's sew through the next. Now let's pick up 1 brown. We're going to skip the downward bead. We're going to sew through the up bead. Let's pick up 1 brown and 1 white this time, and sew through the next. Now let's pick up 1 brown. This is the last bead in this row, so we're going to skip the down bead, sew through the up and its buddy. Sewing through those last 2 beads means that we are ready to start row number 4. Let's start by picking up 2 light green beads and sew through the next. Then 1 brown and sew through the up. 1 white and sew through the up. 1 brown and 1 black and sew through the next. 1 brown and sew through the up. 1 brown and sew through the up. 1 black and 1 brown and sew through the next. 1 brown and sew through the up, and 1 brown and sew through the last 2 beads. We're just going to continue sewing round and round like this. I'll call out the beads. Let's pick up 2 light green beads, one light green, one brown, one white, 1 brown and 1 black, one black, one brown, one black, one black and one brown, one white, one brown, and one light green. And we'll sew through those last 2 beads. And now we get to start row number 6. Let's start with 1 white and 1 light green. One light green, one brown, one brown, one brown, 2 brown beads, one black, one brown, one brown, one black, two brown beads, one white, one brown, one brown, and one light green. Sewing through the last 2 beads. And now we get to start row number 7. Let's start with 1 light green and 1 red. One red, one light green, one brown, one brown, one brown, 2 brown beads, one black, one black, one brown, one black, one black, two brown beads, one brown, one brown, one brown, one light green, and one red. Sewing through the last two beads. And now we get to start row number 8. But before we do that, we have already reached the top of our triangle. So our triangle is not going to get any taller. So what we're going to do is we're just going to be adding beads around the edges now. So let's just sew through or down the red bead without picking up any beads. And that puts our thread in position to start our row number 8. So let's start by picking up one light green, one light green, one light green, one brown, one brown, one brown, two brown beads, one brown, one black, one brown, one brown, one black, one brown, two brown beads, one brown, one brown, one brown, one light green, one white, and one light green. And now we have reached the top of our triangle again. So what we're going to do is turn our triangle over, and now we are in position to sew, continue on with our row number 9 and sewing in this direction again. So let's start row number 9 with one light green, one light green, one red, one light green, one brown, one brown, one brown, one light green and one brown, 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 1 brown, 1 brown and 1 light green, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 light green, 1 light green, 1 white, and 1 white. Now you'll notice there is no up bead to sew through to add our last bead on this row. So what we're going to do to add this last bead is we're going to sew down the red bead. That's that first bead on the top row, on the top of our triangle. And then we need to make sure that our new bead sits in the right position. Okay, so once it's sitting there, now we get to turn around our thread by sewing down the bead right below the red one that we're coming out of. And now we're going to sew up the bead right next to that one, changing direction of our thread, and then sew up the red bead, and then down that new white bead that we just added. Now let's turn over our triangle, and you'll see that we are now in position to start adding our beads for our row number 10. So let's start row number 10 with 1 red, then 1 light green, 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 2 light green, 1 brown, 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 2 light green, 1 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 light green, and 1 light green. Now we are back at the top of our triangle, so let's turn our triangle over, And now we are in position to start adding beads for row number 11. Let's start row number 11 with one light green, 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 two light green, one brown, one brown, one pink, one brown, one brown, one brown, one pink, one brown, one brown, two light green, one 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 light green, and one light green. And once again, there's no up bead for us to sew through. So we're going to sew down that white bead that's on the top, and then make sure that our new bead that we just added falls into place. Now sew down the green bead right below the white one that we're coming out of. Now, changing direction, we're coming out of this green bead. Let's sew up the red bead right next to it. Oops. And then sew up the white bead on the top row. And now we can sew down the new bead that we just added. Turn our triangle over, and now we are in position to start row number 12. Let's start by adding one light green, 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 two light green beads, 1 light green, 1 brown, 1 pink, 1 pink, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 pink, 1 pink, 1 brown, 1 light green, 2 light green, 1 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 light green, and 1 light green. And that completes our 12 rows. So let's turn our triangle over, and now we get to start adding connection beads. If this is the first triangle that you've done with me, then you'll see that to connect our units together, we need some of our units to have connecting beads on some of the sides. Every unit is different. In this particular unit, we are going to have connecting beads on this side. We're going to have them on the bottom, but we're not going to have connecting beads on this side. And we're also going to cap our corners. So let's start by adding our connecting beads down this side with 1 light green, then 1 light green, 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 oops, 1 light green, 1 light green. Now we are down at the corner, so let's cap it with 1 pink bead. And now we get to start adding connecting beads along the bottom. So let's start with 1 light green, 1 light green, 1 brown, 1 pink, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 pink, 1 brown, 1 light green, and one light green. Now let's cap our corner with one pink bead. And now what I like to do is turn my triangle over, and we're going to start sewing up these quadrant line beads. So let's sew up 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, we're not picking up any new beads. 4, 5, and 6. So now that we are in that, coming out of the top of this 6th bead, we're going to change direction. We're going to do a zigzag. So changing directions, we're going to sew down the bead right next to the one that we're coming out of, and then we will sew up the bead right next to that one. I like to call that a zigzag. It's what's keeping this last bead that we just added secure. So let's do that again. We'll sew up 2 beads or 2 rows, 1 and 2. And now we're coming out of the top of this green bead. Let's sew down the bead right next to it, and then up the bead right next to that one, creating a second zigzag, which means that this last bead is extra secure. It's not going to get loose and fall out. Now let's just sew up 2 more beads, 1 and 2, and now we can cut our thread. So let's hold on to our thread with our long nose pliers, and we will cut our thread by putting our scissors as close to the bead as possible without cutting the bead, and just snip it on off. And now we have completed our number 4 unit. He is so cute. I literally think that this would make a super cute earring also. I'm not sure if you're seeing that same thing as I am, but yeah, if you know how to do that. If you know, you know. But yeah, so this is our number 4 unit. It's complete, and we only need 5 of these. So go ahead and do this 4 more times, and I will see you in a second. That was so much fun. Thank you so much for being here with me today and beading along with me. Remember to like and subscribe and hit that bell button so you're notified when the next video comes out. I can't wait to see you there. Thanks for watching.